The rain hammered down like nails on a coffin lid, turning the sidewalk into a river of filth. Marcus Jennings stood frozen, his sneakers soaked through, watching the old man slumped against the brick wall of the abandoned pharmacy. The man's clothes were rags, layers of them, stained and torn, clinging to a body that looked more like a skeleton wrapped in leather. His beard was a wild tangle of gray and white, his eyes half closed, rheumy, staring at nothing. People rushed past. A woman in heels sidestepped him like he was a puddle. A man in a suit pressed his phone closer to his ear, quickening his pace. A group of teenagers laughed, one of them muttering something cruel that Marcus couldn't quite hear over the storm. The old man didn't react. He just sat there, trembling, his thin hand extended, palm up, toward the indifferent world. Marcus felt something twist in his chest, a sharp, hot feeling he couldn't name. It wasn't pity. It was deeper than that. It was rage mixed with something softer, something that made his throat tighten. He thought about his grandmother, how she used to say, "Baby, you always stop for the ones the world forgets. That's how you keep your soul." He stepped forward. The old man's hand was cold, impossibly cold, like ice wrapped in skin. Marcus knelt down in the rain, ignoring the water soaking through his jeans, and wrapped both his hands around the old man's. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey, I got you." The old man's eyes flickered open, and for a moment, Marcus thought he saw something there, something sharp, something that didn't belong in a body this broken. The man's lips parted, and his voice came out in a rasp, like wind through dead leaves. "You're standing on my land," Marcus blinked. "What?" The old man's grip tightened, impossibly strong now, like iron, and he pulled himself up, inch by agonizing inch, until he was standing. The crowd kept moving, oblivious, but Marcus couldn't move. He was rooted to the spot, staring into eyes that were suddenly clear, suddenly burning with a light that made his skin prickle. "You're standing on my land," the old man repeated, louder this time, his voice no longer a whisper but a command. "And you're the first one in 40 years who stopped to see me." Marcus's heart was pounding now, his breath coming fast. I don't understand." The old man smiled, and it was the saddest, most terrifying thing Marcus had ever seen. "You will, boy. Oh, you will. Because what I'm about to tell you, it's going to change everything you thought you knew about this city, about power, and about who really owns the ground you're walking on. And if you think this moment right here is just another homeless man with a wild story, stay with me, because what comes next will shatter everything you believe about justice, legacy, and what happens when the world tries to bury a king alive." Marcus should have walked away. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to pull his hand back, to run, to disappear into the rain like everyone else. But he didn't. Maybe it was the way the old man's eyes held him, like hooks sunk deep into his soul. Maybe it was the way his grandmother's voice echoed in his head, soft and insistent. "You always stop for the ones the world forgets." Or maybe it was the raw, undeniable truth that something about this moment felt inevitable, like the universe had been steering him here all along. The old man released Marcus's hand and staggered back against the wall, his breath coming in shallow gasps. Up close, Marcus could see the lines etched into his face, deep as canyons, each one a story of pain, survival, and something darker. His clothes hung off him like funeral shrouds, but now that he was standing, there was something in his posture, something regal, almost that didn't match the rags. "Who are you?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The old man laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Who am I?" He shook his head slowly, as if the question itself was a joke too cruel to answer. "I used to ask myself that every morning when I woke up in a cell. Every night when I tried to sleep on this godforsaken concrete. But the real question, boy, is who were they, the ones who took everything from me?" Marcus swallowed hard. "I don't understand understand." "You will." The old man straightened, his eyes locking onto Marcus's. "My name is William Ashford. 43 years ago, I owned 6 city blocks in this neighborhood. Right here, where you're standing, used to be the Ashford Tower, 120 stories of steel and glass, the tallest building in the state. I built it with my own hands, my own sweat, my own vision. I was 28 years old, and I was a king." Marcus stared at him, speechless. The name meant nothing to him, but something in the way the old man said king sent a shiver down his spine. "I had everything," William continued, his voice rising now, raw and fierce. "A wife, a daughter, a company worth $500 million. Black owned, black run, black proud. We were building the future, Marcus. We were showing the world that we didn't need their permission, their approval, their scraps. We were taking what was ours." He paused, his jaw tightening. "And they couldn't let that stand." "Who?" Marcus asked. "The city, the banks, the politicians, the system." William spat the last word like poison. "They came for me with lawyers first, tying me up in lawsuits, bleeding me dry. When that didn't work, they came with lies, fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion. None of it true, but it didn't matter. The jury was all white. The judge was a friend of the mayor. My lawyer sold me out for a promotion. I was convicted in 3 hours." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "They framed you, framed me, buried me, erased me." William's voice cracked, and for a moment the king disappeared, and all that was left was a broken old man clinging to the memory of what he'd lost. "They took my company, my land, my name. They took my family. My wife left me while I was in prison. My daughter." His voice broke completely, and he turned away, his shoulders shaking. "My daughter grew up thinking I was a criminal. She changed her name. She won't even look at me." Marcus didn't know what to say. He felt the weight of it all pressing down on him, suffocating him. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Don't be sorry," William said, turning back to him, his eyes blazing. "Be angry. Be furious. Because this isn't just my story, Marcus. This is our story. This is what they do to us when we rise too high, when we shine too bright. They tear us down, lock us up, and make sure the world forgets we ever existed." Marcus felt tears stinging his eyes, but he blinked them back. "Why are you telling me this?" William stepped closer, his hand reaching out to grip Marcus's shoulder. "Because you stopped. You saw me when no one else would. And that tells me something about you, something I haven't seen in a long, long time. You've got a heart that still beats for justice. And I need someone like you to help me take back what's mine." "Take it back?" Marcus shook his head, overwhelmed. "How? It's been 40 years. The land is still mine," William said, his voice low and deadly serious. "They never legally transferred the deed. They buried the paperwork, hoping I'd die before anyone noticed. But I didn't die, Marcus. I survived. And now I've got proof documents, contracts, everything I need to reclaim what they stole. But I can't do it alone. I need someone young, someone smart, someone who still believes that the world can be set right." Marcus stared at him, his mind racing. This was insane. This was impossible. But as he looked into William's eyes, he saw something that made his breath catch hope. Real, raw, desperate hope. "Will you help me?" William asked. And Marcus, against every instinct screaming at him to walk away, nodded. "Yeah," he said, his voice steady now. "I'll help you." William smiled, and for the first time, it wasn't sad. It was fierce. "Good," he said, "because we're about to go to war." The rain didn't stop. If anything, it got worse. Like the sky was trying to wash away the conversation that had just happened. Like the universe itself wanted to drown out the truth before it could take root. But Marcus didn't move. He stood there, water streaming down his face, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. William pulled a plastic bag from inside his coat, the kind you get from a corner store, crinkled and worn from being folded and unfolded 1,000 times. He opened it carefully, protecting it from the rain, and pulled out a stack of papers wrapped in a rubber band. The edges were yellowed, some of them torn, but Marcus could see official seals, signatures, dates stamped in fading ink. "This is it," William said, holding the papers like they were sacred texts. "This is the proof. Land deeds, tax records, incorporation documents, all of it showing that I never sold, never transferred, never gave up what was mine. They forged my signature on the sale documents. I've got the original contracts to prove it." Marcus reached out, his hands trembling, and took the papers. He squinted at them, trying to make sense of the legal jargon, the archaic language, the maze of clauses and subsections. He wasn't a lawyer. He was 17 years old, a high school senior who worked weekends at his uncle's barber shop. But even he could see it, the inconsistencies, the places where signatures didn't quite match, where dates were off by weeks or months. "This is real," Marcus whispered. "Damn right, it's real." William's voice was sharp now, energized. "But here's the thing, Marcus, this paper means nothing if we don't have a way to get it in front of the right people. The courts buried this case once. They'll try to bury it again. We need leverage. We need publicity. We need to make so much noise that they can't ignore us." Marcus looked up at him, rain dripping from his lashes. "How?" William's smile was wolfish. "We go to the source. We go to the building that stands where my tower used to be. We walk in there, and we tell them that they're squatting on stolen land. We make them see me. Make them remember." "That's insane," Marcus said. But even as the words left his mouth, he felt a thrill run through him, a wild, reckless energy that he'd never felt before. "They'll throw us out. Call the cops. Have us arrested." "Maybe," William said. "But they'll also have to answer questions. Why is a homeless man claiming he owns the land? Why does he have documents? Why won't the city produce the original sale records? Once the questions start, Marcus, they don't stop." And that's when the cracks begin to show. Marcus stared at the papers in his hands, then back at William. This man, this broken, forgotten king, was asking him to step into a war that wasn't his, to risk everything for a fight that had been lost decades before he was born. It was madness. It was dangerous. It was probably going to end with both of them humiliated, arrested, or worse. But Marcus thought about his grandmother again, about the stories she used to tell him when he was little, stories about their ancestors, about people who fought impossible fights because the alternative was to surrender their souls. He thought about the way people had walked past William today, their eyes sliding over him like he was invisible, like he was nothing. He thought about how close he'd come to doing the same thing, and he realized something that made his chest tighten. If he walked away now, he'd spend the rest of his life wondering what if. He'd become one of those people who crossed the street, who looked away, who told themselves it wasn't their problem. "All right," Marcus said, his voice stronger now. "Let's do it. But we need a plan. We can't just walk in there looking like..." He gestured at William's tattered clothes, then down at his own soaked jeans and worn sneakers. "Like this." William nodded slowly. "You're right. We need to look legitimate, professional, like we belong." He paused, then looked at Marcus with an intensity that made him feel like he was being measured, weighed, judged. "You got a suit, boy?" Marcus almost laughed. "A suit? Man, I got a button-up shirt I wear to church sometimes." "That's it." "Then we'll get you one." William straightened, and for a moment, the years seemed to fall away from him. His posture shifted, his shoulders squared, and Marcus could almost see the man he used to be, the CEO, the visionary, the king. I still got one friend left in the city. One person who never turned their back on me. If anyone can help us, it's him." "Who?" Marcus asked. "Leonard Hayes. Used to be my CFO before everything went to hell. He managed to stay clean when they came after me, kept his head down, kept working, kept quiet. Last I heard, he's running a small investment firm downtown. If he's still the man I knew, he'll help us." "He owes me that much." Marcus nodded, though doubt gnawed at him. 40 years was a long time. People changed. Loyalties faded. But he could see the determination in William's eyes, the fire that refused to die no matter how much water the world threw at it. "Come on," William said, already moving, his step surprisingly steady for a man who moments ago had looked like he might collapse. "We don't have time to waste. Every day we wait is another day they think they've won." Marcus followed, clutching the papers to his chest, protecting them from the rain. As they walked, people still didn't look at them. They were still ghosts, still invisible. But Marcus felt different now, like he was carrying something sacred, something powerful. Like he was part of a story bigger than himself. And deep down, beneath the fear and the doubt, he felt something else rising, something fierce and unbreakable. Hope. Leonard Hayes' office was nothing like Marcus expected. He'd imagined gleaming skyscrapers, marble floors, receptionists with perfect smiles and voices like honey. Instead, they found themselves standing outside a narrow brownstone in a neighborhood that had seen better days, sandwiched between a laundromat and a bodega with bars on the windows. The sign above the door read Hayes Financial Consulting in letters that had faded to the point of near invisibility. William stood at the door for a long moment, his hand hovering over the buzzer. Marcus watched him, saw the tremor in his fingers, the way his jaw clenched and unclenched. This wasn't just a business meeting. This was a reunion with a past that had been ripped away, a conversation with a ghost of the man William used to be. "You okay?" Marcus asked quietly. William didn't answer right away. Then he pressed the buzzer hard and held it down until a crackly voice came through the intercom. "We're closed. Come back tomorrow." "Leonard," William said, his voice rough. "It's William Ashford." Open the door. Silence. Long, terrible silence. Marcus held his breath, wondering if the man on the other end would pretend he hadn't heard, would ignore them, would leave them standing in the rain like everyone else had. Then the buzzer sounded and the door clicked open. They climbed 3 flights of narrow stairs, the wood creaking under their feet, the walls yellowed with age and cigarette smoke. At the top, a door stood ajar, and through it, Marcus could see a small office cluttered with filing cabinets, stacks of papers, and a desk buried under folders. Behind the desk sat a man in his late 60s, his hair gone completely white, his face lined but still sharp, still intelligent. He wore reading glasses perched on the end of his nose, and when he looked up at them, his expression was unreadable. "Jesus Christ," Leonard Hayes said softly. "William?" William stepped inside, and Marcus followed, closing the door behind them. For a moment, neither man spoke. They just stared at each other, decades of silence and loss hanging between them like a curtain neither knew how to pull back. Then Leonard stood slowly and walked around the desk. He stopped a few feet from William, his eyes scanning him from head to toe, taking in the rags, the dirt, the brokenness. And Marcus saw something flicker across his face. Grief, guilt, maybe both. "What happened to you?" Leonard whispered. "Life," William said simply. "Prison, the streets. Everything you'd expect when the world decides you don't deserve to exist anymore." Leonard flinched. "I tried to help you. After the trial, I tried. I know." William's voice was gentle now, almost forgiving. "I know you did. And I also know they would have come for you too if you'd pushed too hard. You did what you had to do to survive. I don't blame you for that." Leonard's eyes glistened, and he looked away, clearing his throat. "Why are you here, William? After all these years, why now?" William pulled the plastic bag from his coat and set it on the desk. "Because I'm taking it back. All of it. The land, the company, the name they tried to bury. And I need your help." Leonard stared at the bag like it might explode. Slowly, carefully, he opened it and pulled out the papers. Marcus watched as the old man's eyes moved across the pages, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief to something that looked like fear. "These are originals," Leonard breathed. Where did you?" "I kept them," William said. "Hid them before they came for me. Knew I'd need proof someday. Knew they'd try to erase me." He leaned forward, his hands gripping the edge of the desk. "Tell me I'm crazy, Leonard. Tell me I'm chasing ghosts. But look at those papers and tell me I don't have a case." Leonard was silent for a long time, flipping through the documents, cross-referencing dates, checking signatures. Finally, he set them down and removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes. When he looked up, his face was pale. "You've got more than a case," he said quietly. "William, if these documents are legitimate, and they look legitimate, you've got a bombshell. The transfer of your assets was fraudulent. The city sold land they didn't legally own. The current owners, whoever they are sitting on stolen property." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. "So we can win?" Leonard turned to look at him for the first time, really look at him, and Marcus saw the question in his eyes. "Who the hell are you? And why are you here?" "This is Marcus," William said, as if reading his mind. "He's with me. He's the first person in 40 years who stopped to see me as a human being. He's the reason I'm standing here instead of dying on that street corner." Something in Leonard's expression softened. He nodded at Marcus, a small, respectful gesture. Then he turned back to William. "Winning in court is one thing, but you need to understand what you're up against. The company that owns that land now. It's part of a development conglomerate worth billions. They've got lawyers who eat people like us for breakfast. They've got political connections that run all the way to the governor's office. If you go after them, they'll bury you again, only this time they'll make sure you never get back up." "I don't care," William said, his voice like iron. "I didn't survive this long to stay silent. I'm taking back what's mine, Leonard. With or without you." Leonard stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. Not a happy smile, but a fierce one. The smile of a man who'd spent too many years playing it safe and was suddenly remembering what it felt like to fight. "All right," he said. "Let's go to war." They spent the next 3 hours in Leonard's office, hunched over documents spread across every available surface. The desk, the filing cabinets, even parts of the floor. Leonard worked with the precision of a surgeon, cross-referencing dates, pulling up old city records on his ancient desktop computer, making notes in the margins of printouts with a pencil he kept licking the tip of. Marcus watched, fascinated and overwhelmed, trying to keep up with the legal terminology, the corporate jargon, the maze of shell companies and holding corporations that had apparently swallowed William's empire whole. "Here's what we're dealing with," Leonard said finally, pushing his glasses up and leaning back in his chair. "After your conviction, the city seized your assets under civil forfeiture laws, claimed you'd used them in the commission of fraud. They liquidated everything through a rushed auction. The winning bid came from a company called Meridian Holdings. At the time, Meridian was relatively small local investors mostly. But 6 months later, Meridian was acquired by Apex Development Group." "Never heard of them," William muttered. "You wouldn't have back then, but you've heard of them now." Leonard pulled up a website on his computer and turned the monitor toward them. The logo was sleek, modern, a stylized letter A that somehow looked like a mountain peak and a skyscraper at once. Apex is one of the largest real estate development firms in the country now. They own properties in 15 states, have a market cap of about $8 billion. And their CEO. He clicked to another page, and a face appeared on the screen. Marcus felt his stomach drop. The man in the photo was maybe 50, with salt and pepper hair styled immaculately, a sharp jawline, and eyes that were somehow cold, even in a professional headshot. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Marcus's uncle made in a year, and he was smiling, the kind of smile that never reached the eyes, the kind that said, "I own you, and everyone you know." Richard Caldwell, Leonard said. Self-made billionaire, philanthropist, sits on the boards of half a dozen major charities. The mayor loves him. The governor loves him. He's untouchable. Nobody's untouchable, William said, but his voice had gone quiet, and Marcus could hear the doubt creeping in. Leonard sighed. "William, listen to me. I've been running numbers, looking at precedents, trying to figure out how we could possibly win this. The problem is time. 40 years is a long time in property law. There's something called adverse possession. Basically, if someone occupies property long enough, even illegally, they can claim ownership. Apex has been on that land for 4 decades. They've paid taxes, made improvements, operated businesses. Any judge is going to look at that and say that I waited too long." William's hands curled into fists on the desk. "That I should have fought when it happened. You were in prison," Marcus interjected, his voice sharper than he intended. "How are you supposed to fight from a cell?" Leonard looked at him with something like sympathy. "The law doesn't care about fairness, kid. It cares about precedent, procedure, and who's got the better lawyers. And right now, Apex has an army of them." The room fell silent. Marcus could hear the rain still hammering against the windows, could hear the distant sound of sirens somewhere in the city. He looked at William and saw something he hadn't seen before defeat. The fire that had been burning in the old man's eyes was flickering, threatening to go out. And Marcus felt something rise up in him, something hot and furious. "No," he said. Both men turned to look at him. "No," Marcus repeated, standing up. "We're not doing this. We're not sitting here talking about why we can't win. We're going to figure out how we can." Leonard opened his mouth to argue, but Marcus cut him off. "You said Apex has been on that land for 40 years, right? Paying taxes, making improvements, all that. But they're only there because the city sold them stolen property. That makes them complicit. And you said Richard Caldwell is this big philanthropist, right? This guy who's all about charity and doing good and being the face of corporate responsibility." "Yeah," Leonard said slowly. So we expose him," Marcus said, the idea crystallizing in his mind even as he spoke. "We don't just go to court. We go to the public. We tell the story black CEO gets framed, loses everything, spends 40 years homeless while a white billionaire builds an empire on stolen land. We make it so big, so loud that Caldwell has to respond. We make him the villain." Leonard stared at him. "You want to wage a PR war against a billionaire?" "I want to make him bleed," Marcus said. "Not literally, but his reputation, his brand, everything he's built. You said the mayor loves him. The governor loves him. Cool. Let's see how much they love him when the internet's calling him a thief. When protesters are outside his buildings. When every news outlet in the country is asking him why he's living large while the man he stole from is dying on the streets." William was looking at him now, and the fire was back dim but growing. "You think that would work?" "I think it's the only thing that might work," Marcus said. "Because Leonard's right, we probably can't beat them in court. Not with the resources they have. But we can beat them in the court of public opinion. And once we do that, once we make this a story people care about, then maybe, just maybe, we force them to settle. To give you something, to admit what they did." Leonard was quiet for a long time, his fingers drumming on the desk. Then he nodded slowly. "It's risky. If we go public and the story doesn't catch, we're done. Apex will bury us in lawsuits, and William won't get a second chance. I've got nothing left to lose, William said simply. I'm already buried. This is about whether I die in the dirt or die fighting. Marcus looked between them, his heart pounding. So we do it? Leonard pulled out his phone, his fingers moving across the screen. I know a journalist. Investigative reporter. Used to work for the Times before she went independent. If anyone can make this story sing, it's her. But she wants everything, documents, testimony, the whole ugly truth. You ready for that, William? William met his eyes. I've been ready for 40 years. The journalist's name was Diana Reeves, and she looked nothing like Marcus expected. He'd imagined someone older, maybe in a rumpled blazer with coffee stains, carrying a weathered notebook and a cynical sneer. Instead, the woman who walked into the diner where they'd agreed to meet was maybe 35, wearing jeans and a leather jacket, her hair in long braids pulled back from a face that was both beautiful and intimidating. Her eyes were sharp, missing nothing. They swept across William, then Leonard, then landed on Marcus with an intensity that made him want to look away. She slid into the booth across from them without preamble. Leonard, it's been a while. Her voice was smooth, controlled, but there was an edge to it, like a blade waiting to cut. Diana, Leonard said. Thanks for coming. Don't thank me yet. She pulled out a tablet from her bag, set it on the table, and looked directly at William. You're William Ashford. Leonard told me your story. I'll be honest, it sounds too good to be true, which means it's either bullshit or it's the kind of story that ends careers. Maybe mine, maybe yours, definitely someone's. So before we go any further, I need to know, can you prove it? William reached into his coat. He was wearing a clean shirt now, something Leonard had given him from a box of old clothes in his office, and pulled out the plastic bag. He set it on the table between them like a gauntlet being thrown. Diana opened it, pulled out the documents, and began reading. The diner around them hummed with noise-clinking plates, muted conversations, the hiss of the grill, but their booth felt like it existed in its own pocket of silence. Marcus watched Diana's face as she read, watched her expression shift from skepticism to concentration to something that might have been anger. Finally, she looked up. Jesus Christ. This is real. Every word, William said. Diana set the papers down carefully, as if they might disintegrate. Do you understand what you're sitting on? This isn't just a property dispute. This is systemic corruption. This is a story about how the criminal justice system was weaponized to destroy a black entrepreneur and transfer his wealth to white corporate interests. This is the story. Can you tell it? Leonard asked. Diana smiled, and it was a predator smile. Oh, I can tell it. Question is, are you ready for what happens when I do? Because once this goes public, there's no taking it back. Apex will come after you with everything they have. They'll dig into your past. William, every mistake you ever made, every person you ever wronged, every skeleton in every closet. They'll try to destroy your credibility before the story even has time to breathe. And you, she looked at Marcus. You're gonna get dragged into it too. Your family, your friends, your school. They'll make you regret ever getting involved. Marcus swallowed hard. He thought about his mom, about his little sister, about the quiet life they'd built in their small apartment. He thought about how fragile it all was, how easily it could be shattered. But then he looked at William, at the way the old man was sitting up straighter now, at the hope burning in his eyes, and he knew he couldn't walk away. I'm in, Marcus said. Diana studied him for a moment, then nodded. All right. Here's how this works. I'm going to need to verify everything. I'll need to interview you, William, multiple times, on the record. I'll need to track down court documents, talk to people who knew you back then, find corroborating evidence. This could take weeks, maybe months. We don't have months, William said. Every day we wait. Every day we wait. The story gets stronger. Diana interrupted. Because I do this right, or I don't do it at all. You want to go viral on social media with half a story and hope it sticks? Fine. But that's not journalism. That's gambling. And when you're going up against someone like Richard Caldwell, you don't gamble. You build a case so airtight that he can't wiggle out of it. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on William's. I'm going to ask you things you don't want to answer. I'm going to push you on details that hurt to remember. I'm going to fact-check every single claim you make, because if I don't, Apex's lawyers will, and they'll use every inconsistency to tear you apart. Can you handle that? William's jaw tightened, but he nodded. I can handle it. Good. Diana pulled out her phone and started typing. First thing I need is access to the original trial records. Leonard, can you pull those? Already on it, Leonard said. I've got a paralegal friend who owes me a favor. Second, I need to interview people who knew you before the arrest. Business partners, employees, anyone who can speak to your character and the legitimacy of your company. You got any names for me? William hesitated. Most of them are dead. Or they don't want anything to do with me. Give me the names anyway. I'll track them down. Diana's fingers flew across her phone screen. Third, and this is big, I need to know if there's anything in your past that Apex could use against you. Affairs, debts, legal issues, anything. I'm not asking to judge you. I'm asking because I need to be ready when they throw it at me. William's face darkened. There was a woman? After my wife left, we were together for a while, but it ended badly. She accused me of ... things. Harassment. It was during the trial, and it got buried in everything else. But if they dig, they'll dig, Diana said flatly. And when they do, we need to have an answer ready. Was there any truth to her accusations? No. William's voice was firm. She wanted money, wanted me to pay her to go away. I refused, and she went to the press. But there was never any proof because it never happened. Diana made a note. Okay, we'll deal with that when it comes up. Anything else? The question hung in the air. Marcus could see William struggling with it, could see the weight of secrets pressing down on him. Nothing that matters now, William said finally. Diana looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. All right. Let's do this. The first interview took place in Leonard's office 3 days later. Diana set up a small camera on a tripod, adjusted the lighting with a professionalism that made the cramped space feel almost like a real studio, and sat across from William with a recorder between them. Marcus sat in the corner, silent, watching. Tell me about the day they came for you, Diana said, her voice gentle now, coaxing. Start from the beginning. William stared at the recorder for a long moment, and Marcus could see him traveling back in time, could see the memories flickering across his face like shadows. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost distant. It was a Tuesday, March 15th, 1983. I remember because it was my daughter's birthday. She was turning 6, and I'd promised her I'd be home early. We were going to go to Chuck E. Cheese, her favorite place. I was at the office, wrapping up some paperwork, when they walked in, FBI. 6 of them, suits and badges and faces like stone. They told me I was under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to defraud investors. I thought it was a joke at first. I actually laughed. His voice cracked on the last word. They handcuffed me in front of my entire staff. Perp walked me through the lobby of my own building while people stared. Some of them were crying. Some of them looked relieved, like they'd been waiting for me to fall. The cameras were already there. Someone had tipped off the press. My face was on the evening news before I even made it to the station. Black CEO arrested in massive fraud scheme. That's what the headline said. Not accused, arrested. Like I was already guilty. Diana's pen moved across her notepad. What happened to your daughter's birthday? William closed his eyes. I missed it, obviously. My wife took her to Chuck E. Cheese anyway. Tried to pretend everything was normal. But kids aren't stupid. Maya knew something was wrong. She asked where Daddy was, and my wife. His voice broke completely now, and tears started streaming down his face. My wife told her I was sick, that I couldn't come home for a while. That was the beginning of the lie that became our lives. Marcus felt his own throat tightening. He wanted to look away, wanted to give William privacy for this moment of raw pain, but he couldn't. He felt like he owed it to him to witness it, to carry the weight of it alongside him. Tell me about the trial, Diana said after a respectful pause. It was a lynching dressed up as justice, William said, his voice hardening now. They had fabricated documents, bank statements that had been doctored, emails that I never sent, testimony from people I'd never met. My lawyer was court-appointed because by then, they'd frozen all my assets. Couldn't afford my own defense. The man they gave me was fresh out of law school, terrified, overwhelmed. He barely put up a fight. And the prosecutor, William's hands clenched into fists. The prosecutor was a man named Thomas Brennan. White, mid-40s, slick back hair, and a smile that made my skin crawl. He painted me as the worst kind of criminal, a con artist who'd stolen from hard-working people, a fraud who'd used his race to gain sympathy and trust, only to betray it. He made me sound like a monster. Was the jury all white? Diana asked. 11 white, one Hispanic woman who looked terrified the entire time. Not a single black face in the box. William wiped his eyes roughly. They deliberated for 3 hours. 3 hours to decide that 43 years of my life didn't matter. That my business, my dreams, my legacy could all be erased with one word. Guilty. Diana leaned forward. Did you ever find out who was behind it? Who orchestrated the framed job? William nodded slowly. Took me years, but yeah, I found out. There was a city councilman, Edward Morrison. He'd been trying to buy my land for months before the arrest. Wanted to develop it into luxury condos. I refused to sell. Told him that neighborhood was for the people who lived there, not for gentrification. That didn't sit well with him. Morrison had connections to the DA's office, to the banks, to people who could make problems disappear. Or in my case, make people disappear. Is Morrison still alive? Diana asked. Dead. Heart attack in 1997. But his legacy lives on. His son, James Morrison, is now a state senator. And guess who one of his biggest campaign donors is? Diana's eyes sharpened. Richard Caldwell. Bingo. William leaned back, exhausted. It's all connected, Diana. Always has been. This isn't just about one piece of land. It's about a system that protects its own and destroys anyone who threatens it. And if you're black and you're successful, if you're building something that doesn't need their permission or their approval, they'll burn you to the ground and dance on the ashes. The room fell silent, except for the soft whir of the camera. Diana sat back, her expression unreadable, and Marcus could see her mind working, processing, connecting dots. This is bigger than I thought, she said finally. This isn't just a human interest story. This is investigative journalism that could bring down multiple people in positions of power. William, if I run with this, if I publish what you've told me, there will be consequences. For me, yes, but mostly for you. They'll come after you harder than they did the first time. Are you absolutely sure you want to do this? William met her eyes, and Marcus saw something in his face that took his breath away. It wasn't hope anymore. It wasn't even anger. It was certainty. The kind of certainty that comes from having nothing left to lose and everything to gain. I'm not doing this for me, William said quietly. I'm doing this for every black man and woman who's ever been told they didn't belong at the top. Every person who's ever built something beautiful, only to watch it get stolen. Every kid who needs to know that even when the world tries to erase you, even when they bury you alive, you can still rise up and fight back. He looked at Marcus then and smiled a sad, beautiful smile that made Marcus's heart ache. I'm doing this so that 40 years from now, some young man doesn't have to stop and hold the hand of a broken old fool on a street corner. I'm doing this so the next generation doesn't have to. And if you're still here with us, still holding on to this story, comment below and tell me, have you ever witnessed an injustice that everyone else ignored? Because this journey we're on, it's about more than one man's fight. It's about all of us. The story dropped on a Tuesday morning, exactly 3 weeks after that first interview. Diana published it on her independent journalism site, a platform she built from scratch after leaving the mainstream media, a place where she could tell the stories that mattered without editorial interference or corporate pressure. The headline was simple, devastating. The king they buried alive. How a black CEO lost everything to white corporate America. Marcus saw it go live at 6:47 a.m. He'd been checking Diana's site obsessively for days, refreshing the page every few hours, unable to sleep, unable to focus on anything else. When the article finally appeared, he read it 3 times in a row, his heart pounding harder with each pass. Diana hadn't held back. She'd laid out the entire story with surgical precision. Williams' rise, the fraudulent charges, the rigged trial, the stolen land, the connections between Edward Morrison and Richard Caldwell, the 40 years of homelessness. She'd included photos. A young William in a sharp suit cutting the ribbon at the Ashford Tower opening, his smile wide and proud. A mugshot from his arrest, his eyes hollow with shock. And a recent photo she'd taken of him, weathered and scarred but unbowed, standing on the empty lot where his building used to be. But what made the article devastating wasn't just the facts. It was William's voice, his pain, his anger, his unbreakable dignity woven throughout every paragraph. Diana had captured something raw and true, something that made you feel like you were sitting across from him, looking into his eyes, understanding exactly what had been stolen. By 8 a.m., the article had 3,000 shares on social media. By noon, it had 50,000. By 3 p.m., it was trending on Twitter under the hashtag Justice for Ashford. Marcus watched it happen in real time, his phone buzzing constantly with notifications, his hands trembling as the numbers climbed higher and higher. He was at school, supposed to be in chemistry class, but he couldn't focus. None of the other students seemed to notice. They were all on their phones too, scrolling through their feeds, oblivious to the revolution happening in Marcus's pocket. At 4:15 p.m., his phone rang. It was Leonard. "Turn on the news," Leonard said, his voice tight with something Marcus couldn't quite identify. Excitement? Fear? "Channel 7, right now." Marcus ducked into an empty bathroom, pulled up a news stream on his phone, and found Channel 7. The anchor, a polished woman with perfect hair and a serious expression, was mid-sentence. Story that's taking social media by storm. We're joined now by Richard Caldwell, CEO of Apex Development Group, who has agreed to address these allegations. Mr. Caldwell, thank you for joining us. The camera cut to Richard Caldwell, and Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The man looked exactly like his photo, impeccably dressed, perfectly composed, that there was tension in his jaw, a tightness around his eyes that suggested he was barely holding it together. "Thank you for having me," Caldwell said, his voice smooth as silk. "I want to address these accusations head on because they're deeply troubling, not because they're true, but because they're so fundamentally false. Mr. Ashford's story is tragic, certainly. No one should have to endure what he's endured. But to suggest that Apex Development, or I personally, had anything to do with his legal troubles 4 decades ago is not just wrong, it's defamatory." "But the documents," the anchor began. "Documents can be misinterpreted," Caldwell interrupted smoothly. "The land that Apex acquired was purchased legally through a public auction. We have all the paperwork to prove it. The city had seized Mr. Ashford's assets through proper legal channels after his conviction for fraud. We didn't steal anything. We bought property that was for sale. Mr. Ashford claims the conviction was fraudulent. Mr. Ashford was convicted by a jury of his peers in a court of law," Caldwell said, his voice hardening slightly. "I sympathize with his situation, but I'm not going to let false accusations tarnish the reputation of a company that employs thousands of people and has invested billions of dollars in community development. This is a clear case of someone trying to rewrite history because they don't like the outcome." Marcus felt rage boiling up inside him. The way Caldwell spoke, so calm, so reasonable, so utterly convinced of his own righteousness, made him want to throw his phone against the wall. But then the anchor did something unexpected. She leaned forward, her expression sharpening. "Mr. Caldwell, the article mentions that you've donated heavily to Senator James Morrison, whose father was allegedly involved in orchestrating Mr. Ashford's downfall. Can you comment on that relationship?" For just a fraction of a second, Caldwell's mask slipped. Marcus saw it, a flash of irritation, maybe even fear. Then it was gone, replaced by that smooth smile. "I donate to many political candidates across the spectrum," Caldwell said. "Senator Morrison is a respected public servant who's done tremendous work for this state. Any suggestion that my support for him is connected to events that happened before I even entered the real estate business is absurd conspiracy theory. But you must admit the optics are troubling. What's troubling is that a Trias, reputable news organization, is giving airtime to baseless accusations," Caldwell said, his voice taking on an edge now. "I came on this program in good faith to set the record straight. But if you're going to continue pushing this narrative, I think we're done here." He stood up, unclipping his microphone, and walked off camera. The anchor looked stunned for a moment, then turned back to the camera. "Well, that was Richard Caldwell, CEO of Apex Development. We'll continue to follow this developing story." Marcus switched off the stream, his heart racing. Caldwell had just made a massive mistake. By walking out, by losing his cool even for a moment, he'd shown the world that he was rattled, that the story had teeth. His phone buzzed. A text from William. "Did you see it?" Marcus typed back quickly. "He's scared. We got him scared." William's response came immediately. "Good. Let him be scared. Let him know what it feels like." Another text, this time from Diana. "Check Twitter. It's exploding." Marcus opened the app and his breath caught. Hashtag Justice for Ashford was now the #1 trending topic in the country. The replies under Diana's article were in the tens of thousands of people sharing their own stories of injustice, of being pushed down, of watching powerful people get away with everything. There were celebrities weighing in, activists organizing, lawyers offering pro bono services. It was becoming something bigger than any of them had imagined. And then Marcus saw something that made his blood run cold. A tweet from an account called it Truth Matters Now with a single line. "William Ashford isn't telling you everything. Wait for the real story." The account had posted a blurry photo, William, much younger, arguing with a woman Marcus didn't recognize. The woman's face was twisted in anger or fear, her hand raised as if to ward him off. Marcus's stomach dropped. This was it. This was the counterattack Diana had warned them about. Marcus called William immediately, his hand shaking so badly he almost dropped the phone. It rang twice before William picked up. "I saw it," William said before Marcus could speak. His voice was hollow, defeated. "I knew they'd do this. I knew they'd dig her up. Who is she?" Marcus asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Her name was Vanessa Cole. The woman I told Diana about, the one who accused me of harassment during the trial." William's breath came in ragged gasps over the phone. "It was a lie, Marcus. I swear to God it was a lie. But they're going to use it to destroy everything we've built. They're going to make me look like... We need to call Diana, Marcus interrupted. Right now. We need to get ahead of this. There's no getting ahead of it, William said, and Marcus could hear the despair creeping into his voice, the fire dimming. They've got a photo. They've got her testimony from back then. They're going to paint me as an abuser, a predator. And once they do that, none of the rest matters. The land, the fraud, the corruption, it all disappears under the weight of that accusation. No, Marcus said fiercely. No, we're not giving up. Not now. Not when we're this close. Close to what? William's voice broke. Close to watching my name get dragged through the mud all over again? Close to having the whole world think I'm a monster? Maybe they're right, Marcus. Maybe I should have stayed on that street corner. At least there, I was invisible. At least there, I couldn't hurt anyone else. Stop it, Marcus said, his own voice cracking. Just stop. You didn't come this far to quit now. We knew they'd fight dirty. We knew they'd try to break you. But you're William fucking Ashford. You survived 40 years of hell. You're not breaking now. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, I'm tired, Marcus. I'm so tired. Marcus felt tears stinging his eyes, but he blinked them back. I know, but you don't get to be tired yet. Not until we finish this. Call Diana. Tell her everything about Vanessa Cole, the real story, not their version. And then we figure out how to fight back. Another long silence. Then, okay, I'll call her. The line went dead. Marcus stood in the empty bathroom, staring at his reflection in the scratched mirror. His eyes were red, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. He looked older than he had 3 weeks ago, harder, like the world had taken something soft from him and replaced it with steel. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from a number he didn't recognize. He almost declined it, but something made him answer. Is this Marcus Jennings? A woman's voice asked. Professional, clipped. Who's asking? My name is Sarah Chun. I'm a reporter with the Washington Post. I'm doing a story on William Ashford, and I understand you've been helping him. I'd like to ask you a few questions. Marcus's stomach tightened. I don't have anything to say. That's fine. But I think you should know we've been investigating Apex development for the past 6 months, completely independent of Ms. Reeves's article. And we found some very interesting things. Things that corroborate Mr. Ashford's story. Things that suggest the conspiracy goes even deeper than anyone realized. Marcus's breath caught. What kind of things? I can't discuss details over the phone, but I'd like to meet with you and Mr. Ashford. Today, if possible. What we found could change everything. Marcus's mind raced. Could be a trap. Could be Apex trying to figure out what they knew, what they were planning next. But what if it wasn't? What if this was the break they needed? I'll talk to him, Marcus said, carefully. But I'm not promising anything. That's all I ask. Here's my number. She rattled it off, and Marcus saved it. Call me when you're ready. She hung up. Marcus stood there for a moment, trying to process everything that had just happened in the span of 10 minutes. Then he left the bathroom, walked straight past his locker without stopping, and headed for the exit. School didn't matter anymore. Test didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was getting to Leonard's office where William and Diana would be meeting. He ran the whole way, his backpack bouncing against his spine, his lungs burning. The rain had finally stopped, but the streets were still slick, reflecting the gray sky like mirrors. He dodged through crowds, ignored honking cars, pushed himself until his legs screamed. When he burst into Leonard's office, gasping for breath, he found the 3 of them already there. William slumped in a chair, his face in his hands. Diana pacing like a caged animal. Leonard at his computer, typing furiously. There's a reporter from the Washington Post, Marcus blurted out between breaths. She says they've been investigating Apex independently. Says they found something that corroborates everything. Diana stopped pacing. Who? Sarah Chun. Diana's eyes widened. Sarah Chun? Jesus. She's the real deal. Broke the story on that pharmaceutical company cooking their trial data. If she's reaching out, it means she's got something solid. Or it means Apex is trying to figure out what we know, Leonard said without looking up from his computer. No, Diana said, shaking her head. Sarah doesn't work like that. If she says she's got something, she's got something. We should meet with her. What about the Vanessa Cole situation? Leonard asked. Diana pulled out her phone. I'm already on it. I've got a pie tracking her down, found her living in Arizona. Gonna reach out, see if she'll talk. Maybe after 40 years, she's ready to tell the truth. And if she's not? William asked, his voice muffled by his hands. Then we deal with it, Diana said firmly. But Marcus is right. We don't quit now. We push forward. We take every hit they throw at us, and we keep moving. That's how you win wars. Not by avoiding damage, but by taking it and refusing to fall. William finally looked up, his eyes red but clear. Set up the meeting with Sarah Chun. Diana nodded. Already texting her. Marcus collapsed into a chair, his body finally registering the exhaustion. Leonard reached into a drawer and tossed him a bottle of water. Marcus caught it, twisted off the cap, and drank half of it in one long gulp. Welcome to investigative journalism, kid, Leonard said with a grim smile. It's all downhill from here. But Marcus couldn't help thinking as he looked at William's determined face, at Diana's fierce focus, at Leonard's steady hands, that maybe, just maybe, they were actually climbing. They met Sarah Chun in a coffee shop in downtown Neutral Territory, public enough to feel safe, but quiet enough to talk. She was younger than Marcus expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and an intensity that reminded him of Diana. She carried a leather messenger bag worn smooth with use and ordered black coffee without looking at the menu. Thank you for meeting me, Sarah said, settling into the booth across from William, Marcus, and Diana. Leonard had stayed behind to continue digging through records. I know trust is in short supply right now, so I'll be direct. For the past 6 months, my team at the Post has been investigating Apex Development's acquisition practices. We started with a tip about irregularities in a deal they made in Baltimore properties purchased at suspiciously low prices, original owners claiming they were forced out. As we dug deeper, we found a pattern. She pulled a tablet from her bag and slid it across the table. On the screen was a map of the United States with dozens of red pins scattered across it. Each pin represents a property Apex acquired under questionable circumstances, Sarah continued. Foreclosures that happened unusually fast. Eminent domain cases where the city just happened to sell to Apex immediately after. Business owners who claim they were threatened or sabotaged until they had no choice but to sell. Your case, Mr. Ashford, isn't an anomaly. It's part of a 40-year pattern. William stared at the map, his jaw working. How many? 63 properties that we can confirm. Probably more that we haven't uncovered yet. Combined current value? About $12 billion. Diana let out a low whistle. And you can prove the acquisitions were fraudulent? Some of them, yes. We have testimony, documents, paper trails. But here's the thing. Sarah leaned forward, her voice dropping. Apex is very good at covering their tracks. They use shell companies, intermediaries, lawyers who specialize in making problems disappear. Most of their victims were people without resources, immigrants, single mothers, elderly folks, people of color. People who couldn't fight back, couldn't afford lawyers, couldn't make enough noise to matter. People like me, William said quietly. Exactly like you. Which is why your story is so important. You have documentation that survived. You have a clear chain of events. You have evidence of corruption at multiple levels of government. You're not just one more victim claiming you were wronged. You're the smoking gun that could bring the whole operation down. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. So what do you need from us? Everything you have. Documents, testimony, names. I want to coordinate with Diana, combine our investigations into one comprehensive piece. The Post has resources she doesn't. Legal teams, fact checkers, a platform that reaches millions. And timing matters here. Apex is already trying to discredit Mr. Ashford with the Vanessa Cole story. We need to hit back hard and fast before that narrative takes root. About Vanessa Cole, Diana started, but Sarah held up a hand. I know about her. I've already tracked her down. Sarah pulled out her phone and scrolled through notes. Vanessa Cole, nee Martinez. Currently living in Scottsdale, Arizona. Married, 2 kids, works as a real estate agent. I called her this morning. William's head snapped up. You what? I called her. Told her I was investigating what happened 40 years ago and wanted her side of the story. Sarah's expression softened slightly. Mr. Ashford, she cried for 20 minutes before she could even speak. She said she's been carrying the guilt of what she did for 4 decades. She said they paid her $50,000 to make those accusations. Said a man came to her apartment, tall, white, expensive suit, and told her that if she didn't cooperate, they'd make sure she lost her job and her apartment. She was 23, undocumented, terrified. So she did what they told her. The booth fell silent. Marcus watched William's face cycle through emotions, shock, relief, anger, grief, before settling on something that looked like exhaustion. She's willing to go on record? Diana asked. She's willing to go on record, Sarah confirmed. She wants to make it right. She said. Sarah glanced at her notes. She said, I've watched that man suffer for something I helped destroy him over, and I can't die with that on my conscience. If telling the truth now means anything, I have to do it. William covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking. Marcus reached out instinctively, putting a hand on the old man's arm. For a moment, no one spoke. The coffee shop hummed around them, the hiss of the espresso machine, the murmur of conversations, the clink of ceramic, but their booth existed in its own pocket of silence. Finally, William lowered his hands. His eyes were wet, but his voice was steady. When can we publish? I need 3 days, Sarah said. 3 days to finalize everything. Get legal clearance, coordinate with Diana. We'll publish simultaneously her platform and the Post. Maximum impact, maximum reach. By the time Apex realizes what's happening, it'll be too late to stop it. What about Richard Caldwell? Marcus asked. He's already trying to spin this as fake news. Conspiracy theory bullshit stuff. Sarah smiled, and it wasn't kind. Let him, because what we're about to publish isn't speculation. It's not one man's word against a corporation. It's a comprehensive investigation backed by documents, testimony from multiple sources, and evidence of a systematic pattern of fraud and corruption. Caldwell can call it whatever he wants. The facts won't care. Diana pulled out her laptop. Let's get to work. For the next 4 hours, they sat in that coffee shop booth, going through everything, documents spread across the table, voices low and intense, building the case piece by piece. Sarah recorded William's testimony, asked questions that cut to the bone, pushed him to remember details he'd tried to forget. Diana cross-referenced dates and names, filled in gaps, connected dots. Marcus took notes, organized files, made sure nothing got lost in the chaos. Outside, the sun set and the streetlights flickered on. Inside, they built a weapon. And Marcus realized something as he watched them work, as he saw the story taking shape. This wasn't just about William anymore. This wasn't even just about Apex. This was about every person who'd ever been crushed by people with power. Every voice that had been silenced, every injustice that had been buried and forgotten. This was about making sure the world remembered. If you've made it this far, if you're feeling what I'm feeling right now, drop a comment and tell me, what would you risk everything for? Because that's what these people are doing. They're putting it all on the line for truth. And that kind of courage, that's what changes the world. The article, published at 6 a.m. on a Friday morning, coordinated perfectly between Diana's platform and the Washington Post. The headline on the Post's homepage was stark, uncompromising. Empire of Theft: How Apex Development Built a billion-dollar fortune on stolen land. Marcus was awake when it went live. He'd barely slept, too wired with anticipation and fear. He sat on his bed in the dark, his phone glowing in his hands, and watched the numbers climb. Shares, comments, retweets. The story spread like wildfire, jumping from platform to platform, igniting conversations everywhere it touched. By 7 a.m., it was the top story on every major news site. By 8 a.m., #Ashford Truth was trending worldwide. By 9 a.m., protesters had gathered outside Apex Development's headquarters in Manhattan, dozens of them at first. Then hundreds, holding signs that read, "Justice for Ashford" and "Billionaires built on bones," and "Give I to back." Marcus got dressed quickly, quietly, so he wouldn't wake his mother or sister. He left a note on the kitchen table, "Had to go. I'll explain later. Love you," and slipped out into the morning. The air was crisp and clean, the sky that particular shade of blue that promised a beautiful day, and Marcus felt like he was walking through a dream. Everything felt surreal, like the world had tilted on its axis and nothing would ever be the same again. He met William, Diana, Leonard, and Sarah outside Apex's headquarters at 10 a.m. The crowd had swollen to nearly 1,000 people now, their voices rising in chants that echoed off the glass and steel towers. Police had set up barricades, trying to keep order, but the energy was electric, barely contained. News vans lined the street, reporters doing live shots, cameras pointed at the building's entrance like weapons. William stood at the edge of the crowd, staring up at the building. He looked small next to it, fragile, but there was something in his posture that Marcus recognized now, the king, standing before the castle that should have been his. "You ready?" Diana asked, her camera in hand. William nodded. "Let's go." They'd planned this moment carefully. Diana would film. Sarah would provide media credentials to get them through security, and Leonard would handle any legal challenges. Marcus's role was simple. Stay close to William, be his anchor. Make sure he didn't get lost in the chaos. They pushed through the crowd, Diana filming everything. The faces of the protesters, the signs, the chants, the raw emotion. When they reached the barricades, Sarah flashed her press credentials and talked fast to the police officers. For a moment, Marcus thought they'd be turned away. Then one of the officers nodded and lifted the barrier. They walked toward the entrance. The doors were glass, reflecting the crowd behind them, and through them, Marcus could see the lobby marble floors, soaring ceilings, a reception desk that looked like it cost more than his entire apartment building. Security guards stood inside, watching them approach with expressions that ranged from confusion to hostility. William stopped at the doors. His hand reached out, pressed against the glass, and Marcus saw it trembling. "This used to be mine," William whispered. "All of it. Every brick, every beam, every dream poured into these foundations. They took it from me, and they built their empire on top of my grave. But I'm not dead yet." He pushed the doors open and walked inside. The lobby fell silent. Everyone, security guards, receptionists, people in expensive suits waiting for elevators, turned to stare. Marcus felt their eyes on him, felt the weight of their judgment, their confusion, their fear. But he kept walking, kept his eyes on William's back, kept moving forward. "Sir," "You can't be in here," one of the security guards said, stepping forward. He was young, maybe mid-20s, with the build of someone who spent too much time at the gym. "This is private property. You need to leave." "Private property?" William's voice rang out, clear and strong, echoing off the marble. "This is my property, my land, my legacy, and I'm here to take it back." The guard reached for his radio, but Sarah stepped forward, her press credentials held high. "Sarah Chun, Washington Post. We're here to speak with Richard Caldwell. He'll want to take this meeting. Mr. Caldwell doesn't take unscheduled meetings. He'll take this one," Diana said, her camera still rolling. "Unless he wants footage of him having a 70-year-old man dragged out of his own building to go viral in the next 10 minutes. The guard hesitated, clearly torn between protocol and the very real threat of bad publicity. Then his radio crackled and a voice came through. "Send them up." The elevator ride to the top floor was the longest 2 minutes of Marcus's life. They stood in silence, watching the numbers climb 30, 40, 50, 60 until finally the doors opened onto a floor that looked like it belonged in a different universe. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Art on the walls that probably cost millions. Furniture so sleek and modern it barely looked real. And at the far end of the hall, standing in the doorway of his office, was Richard Caldwell. He looked different, in person older, harder, with eyes that assessed and calculated in microseconds. He wore a charcoal suit that fit perfectly, his salt and pepper hair styled with precision. And when he smiled, it was the smile of a predator who just spotted prey. "Mr. Ashford," Caldwell said, his voice smooth as silk. "After 40 years, we finally meet. Please, come in. Let's talk about what you think you're owed." William walked forward, his step steady, his head high. Marcus followed, his heart pounding so hard he thought everyone could hear it. And as they crossed the threshold into Richard Caldwell's office, into the heart of the empire built on stolen dreams, Marcus thought, this is it. This is where everything changes.